We are going to be talking about the squad today, and that's broadly AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, but we can also kind of include the broader progressives in the House, that being Ro Khanna, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Mondaire Jones, Pramila Jayapal. These characters are also kind of in discussion today, where we can broadly kind of refer to the progressives in Congress, whether it be the Justice Democrats or really the progressive leaders at large, the ones that are, most associated with the progressive movement, the ones that were behind Bernie Sanders, Mark Pocan. But again, we can kind of focus on AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Ayanna Pressley because they were the original quote unquote squad members. They're kind of most representative, most popular. Most people probably are more familiar with their policy decisions and their track record.
Benchmark following Bernie
exactly.
Sanders. Yeah.
Exactly. So just so everyone's aware, that's what we'll be talking about today. And again, as I mentioned earlier, after the whole force the vote, whatever you want to call it, movement call, it really divided the left the way that the squad members responded to this. Obviously, with some people feeling like they didn't respond appropriately and some people feeling like it wasn't really an activist call in the first place and that they didn't need to respond to it. So again, that's kind of the backdrop of this debate is that, since that happened, there's been a lot of divisive debate and a lot of polarization over these figures and their effectiveness overall within Congress and for the progressive movements. And some people have leveled the charge that they have sold out, that after getting into Congress, they've abandoned their values that they ran on. They've gone in there and they're basically career climbers. And Zach and I are going to be pretty much neutral today. As I've said before, I think that both of these guys are going to make really great cases. And I think there's validity to both sides personally. So I'm just excited, as I'm sure Zach is, to hear out Ian and Franco and hear both robust sides of this argument, both of which probably have a lot of value. So again, this isn't going to be a blood sport debate. This is going to be a productive conversation. We want to get to the bottom of this discussion. We don't want to, make the left even more divided. We're trying to kind of, figure out,
talk strategy essentially, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I wanted to jump back in here kind of with this, we'll call it pop question just to kind of get us started off. Because I think it's really important before we can have a productive debate to establish terms, right? And just quickly before we, kind of dive into our conversation as it specifically pertains to, the squad, I wanted to get both Franco and Ian's response to how you would personally define a sellout, right? Because I think it's important that everybody understands where we're coming at when we're using that term. For one person, it could mean something more severe than somebody else. So just to kind of get the ball rolling there, if Franco or Ian, whomever would like to kind of chime in first, if you could just describe in your view what you interpret as a sellout.
So I was actually gonna say that before. I was like, we should probably closely define what we mean by sellout. I would probably just say, under the most rudimentary definition, is just sellout is a politician who probably is just if they run on not taking corporate cash and they start taking corporate cash, or they start jeopardizing their core values per se, yeah, that's probably considered being a sellout.
So I would say that a sellout, the way that I define it, and then I got this definition also from somebody else who did a great job analyzing this. Shout out to Dantel from Unapologetic. He got this definition from a source as well. It says a betrayal of one's principles for reasons of expediency. So in the case of the squad, they're giving up their principles and promises that they ran on originally for political expediency. They don't want to shake things up. They don't want to take risks of getting their party leadership upset with them.
Okay, cool. So now that we have those definitions out of the way, I think it's a good time to segue into our next question. And I think this one is equally important as far as defining kind of the terms of this debate and what we're really talking about here. And that is, what do you want out of a congressional representative? To you guys, what does the role of a congressperson mean? And ideally, what do you think a leftist or socialist or progressive congressperson would look like or do? We can start with Ian, since you just talked, Franco.
So, all right. So some people aren't going to like this, but again, I have reasons. I think what I want out of a representative is purely utilitarian in the sense that they can bring the least amount of harm and the most amount of good. Now, usually people's problem with that is that, like, okay, they're still working within a capitalist system. That's right. And the problem is we can't. You're not going to overturn capitalism via electoral politics. It's not going to happen. It won't happen. And so I think we need to be we need to be strategic on the ends of electoral politics. Look at closely not what we think are idealisms, but our actual action, what we are actually doing. And so specifically for people, we'll get into it. Specifically for people like the Squad, if we can map their I don't know, like value to Congress, it's probably a net positive. Are they revolutionary? No, and they sure as hell are not supposed to be, really. But I still think having social democrats, despite their insane insufficiencies, is still a net positive in the end. But if stuff's going to happen, mind you, we're not supposed to be putting it on people like AOC. We're not supposed to be putting it on people in the House.
So
that's interesting. Franco?
As a congressperson, you should be representing and answering to the people who elected you, not to the party bosses or corporations who pay them or other members in their party. So in theory, that's what it should be. Seeing how Congress and the entire US government is currently structured to serve the wealthy, any politician who wants to serve the people in the theoretical sense and actually represent them instead of the predator class, they're not going to get far. They're not going to get far in their career by working within the system unless they sell out. And again, by sell out, it doesn't always mean taking money from corporations. It means abandoning one's principles and promises for expediency. So if a politician were to not sell out, the best thing that a progressive congressperson can do is go full gloves off and expose the corruption to the masses. They should also introduce progressive legislation, even if it doesn't garner support from their colleagues, because like AOC said herself, when she put out a tweet defending her stance on the most recent impeachment, she said it's to get members on the record so people can't make excuses later. Sometimes these votes create real political pressure that forces development. Sometimes we vote for the historical record to let future generations know that we did everything we could. And those are her words. They should also use their position to support grassroots and activist groups by supporting these groups. They are serving and they're representing people instead of only being in office and pretending that they are. The grassroots and activist groups must also not be co-opted, like how Sunrise and 350.org are. They're co-opted. Robbie Yeager, Cory Morningstar, they've done fantastic work exposing how they're co-opted by organizations like Sierra Club, which receive money from the Rockefeller Foundation, Lockheed Martin, and BP. There's also an article on the Gray Zone that exposes Bill McKibben of 350.org, the Sunrise Movement, and Naomi Klein, all of which they take corporate money. So this is unacceptable. And if the Squad stood by their principles and actually cared about the environment, they should be calling this out. They should be exposing this. They must also focus on systemic changes, not just grandstanding and making tweets about policies and then not passing any legislation that engenders systemic changes. It also can't be just them showing up to a protest every other month and then disappearing, and then it results in no change.
Yeah.
Okay, well, before we move on to the next question,
I
or
wanted
point,
to get a response from Ian.
And specifically in regards, I wanted to hear Franco leveled the charge that AOC just showed up at the protest, every once in a while. Do you have a direct response to that in particular, or anything else that Franco said?
Or is that for me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I was gonna respond. I think that again, the discussion on this gets leveled on a very individual level on politicians. Yet I think the best thing we can probably do is not purely analyze the content, what's going on, but like analyze the form, the parameters at large. And those parameters being set by, a very predatory capitalist system. Thus, I think that placing a lot of the inherent blame on electoral, people elected into Congress seems like look, like we can critique all of these individuals, and we should, and I'm totally fine with that. The thing is I don't want to lose focus from what is arguably the way more detrimental thing, and that's the entire system that they have to operate within. So, for example, like a lot of people have said that Bernie Sanders is, this, he's kind of a, I've even heard neoliberal. Most people don't think that, but I've heard he's kind of just, he's just a washed out Democrat. And that's probably not right, because one, we just have to be very specific. Bernie Sanders, let's be honest, he's working within a extremely stringent capitalist system. And so he ran as a social democrat. Bernie Sanders probably wasn't a social democrat. If you saw some of his older stuff, I think he spoke in favor of a lot of like actual sort of revolutionary politics, or pretty much stuff we'd consider just kind of milquetoast democratic socialist. But that's different than social democracy. So I think we need to be clear with this discussion about like force the vote or are the squad sellouts. We can't simply focus on the question itself. Sort of seems to be aimed not at the totality of the problem. It's just a part of the problem. The totality of the problem really being that it's a system as a whole. These people, the squad, can't actually operate as intended by default.
Well, that's a good segue.
I think that's a perfect segue into kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of where the rubber kind of hits the road on these kinds of things. And so I guess Franco, if you want to kind of take the first crack at our next question, we wanted to talk a little bit about force the vote. And, do you think the way the squad responded was appropriate?
I think it's absolutely not appropriate. They gave up all their leverage by voting for Nancy Pelosi as speaker. We're in the middle of an economic and health crisis, and they didn't use their leverage when they could have. Kyle Kulinski, who's the co-founder of Justice Democrats, said that the Justice Democrats aren't there to make friends, but it seems like that's what they're doing with Nancy Pelosi and all these other corporate Democrats that they're supposed to be opposing. This is not what we were promised. From what Kyle Kulinski told us, from what the squad was when they were running for Congress, they were saying that they were going to challenge these people. And for 10 months, the squad watched that happen. And then they didn't fight for the people. So that, in my opinion, makes them sellouts. Like, they saw the people suffering, people being evicted, people losing their jobs, losing their health care. And like, to me, their lack of action to get Medicare for all, this is very similar to like how Obama promised us universal health care in 2008. And then he never gave it to us. And then it became less negotiable over time. And now 13 years later, we still do not have universal health care. And the squad couldn't even force the vote on Nancy Pelosi. Defending politicians who are not challenging the system is defending the system, and it is defending against progress. The squad is supposed to be for progress, not for it in theory, and their actions show that they defend the system. Now, my opponent may bring up instances from the past in which the squad did some good things, or examples of them doing some good things that don't engender systemic changes and are just surface level and optical grandstanding. So we can't call them sellouts because they did some good things in the past. In order to be a sellout, you had to have at one point been on the side of the working class. And to me, what they're doing now doesn't seem like they're on the side of the working class. They're on the side of the party leadership of the Democratic Party. They failed to provide healthcare in a pandemic. They failed to provide assistance in the worst economic crisis in U.S. history. They succeeded in bailing out the corporations who are oppressing us. They took multiple vacations. They allowed Joe Biden to stack his cabinet with tools of the establishment and warmongers with no resistance. They prioritized fighting for corporations to censor people and for impeachment instead of fighting to give people healthcare and relief checks. And now AOC is saying she's using the words access to healthcare. And in 2020, she was talking about if we get the public option, she said, so be it. I have access to a mansion, but it doesn't mean that I can afford it. This is the tricky word that people like Elizabeth Warren and other Democrats use when they want to pretend to be for Medicare for all. And then in the end, the defense that AOC was using for why she's not going to force the vote is because she wanted to get committee seats. Now, AOC did not get a committee seat, but Kathleen Rice, who's a corporate Democrat, she actually used her leverage by withholding her vote from Nancy Pelosi until Kathleen Rice got a committee seat, and then in return, she voted for Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's how the entire political system operates. Yeah, so, but again, I think we need to look at what we're actually doing and what we're discussing. I think, in essence, we're kind of putting this on this group of people, when it's like this is going to happen over and over and over again. Thus, I actually think the real important thing you have to do is organize and actually go from the ground up and actually. I got to be careful with what I say, but you have to completely uproot the very foundations of what's going on, and that can't purely happen as far as electoral politics goes. So I want to be able to encompass everything here. Now, if we want to talk about purely electoral politics, which I don't think we should completely abandon, there's a lot of I would say traditional Marxists who would be definitely like electoral politics isn't a thing. I think that's pretty short-sighted. I think everyone here probably would agree that we should be able to organize and then also probably partake in the little democracy that we do have. I think that's smart. But as far as electoral politics goes, all right, as insufficient as it is, we can purely focus on that. Now that's said, that yeah, this is going to happen over and over. Maybe I would just ask Franco, like what do you what if they are radically insufficient, which they actually are, what do you propose? Like because when I'm mapping and when I'm trying to place a value on like our representatives and stuff like that, the squad is probably the best that we have, as shitty as that is. We could probably go segue into like strategy now. So what's your take on that?
Well, apply as much public. Sorry, I thought he was asking me a question.
No. Yeah. No, that's for Franco. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, you can respond directly to that.
They have to apply as much pressure. Like we have to apply as much pressure on them to make them feel the urgency that people are suffering right now. And you have to do your job as legislators. And you're right. Like we can't just put this expectation only on them. But they're the ones that promised us that they weren't going to be like the corporate Democrats. Sure. We should be pressuring all politicians. But again, these people promised us and were telling us that they're not like them and that they were going to challenge them, and they're not doing that. So we have to apply public pressure to make them feel the urgency. And I think force the vote was a way we could have done that. And that's what we attempted to do in DC, is to make them feel the heat. Look, we're out here. We're trying to pressure you to do the right thing and to do the thing that you ran on.
Yeah. No, I mean, so I just don't know if I'm just looking at this from the larger grand scheme and just seeing how insufficient even the electoral approach sort of is, and the all-encompassing, thing. Organize, like, yeah, sure, we can force a vote. That's fine. I find the idea of even really arguing about whether people, I can't believe it blew up like it did. I think it's actually really, really dumb. I'm not gonna lie. And I think that goes for both sides. But I think a lot of the I saw people. So from individuals like Ben Burgess, who I quite like, who's very, very concrete in his thinking. I think he took the approach that, like, look, this is kind of stupid. That even like the idea of forcing the vote's fine, purely an electoral lens. But of course, the discussions being held only in this electoral lens, we need to discuss this in a larger, concrete lens. And it's not a matter of like force the vote or not. It's a matter of really like are we going to like organize and strike? So I mean, we can talk about both. I don't want. I feel like the conversation is incredibly one-sided purely on the content. Well, we need to understand the form of what's going on. We need to understand what we are doing. Again, I kind of like the approach, the more Marxist approach that, like, look, like, it's not about arguing within the set system of parameters. Like, really, it's like understanding those parameters, and those parameters are laid out that even people like the squad are going to be squashed. They are going to be stuck. Now, maybe if things go okay and for some miraculous miracle people start voting like crazy, but I don't think that's going to happen. Of course, we have the Republican Party trying to stifle democracy at large. I just think the entire discussion around the squad seems to be super insufficient. It seems like a very individualized, like sort of narrow focus on a group of people who have so little power, and that's not necessarily it's more not a defense of them. It's an indictment of the entire system as a whole.
Well, can I get in here real quick and ask you guys to respond to something else that's on this similar topic? And I think it kind of gets back to the definition or purpose of Congress people in the first place, and that's just what you guys think about Congress people as activists. Should Congress people be applying activist techniques to pressure their party leadership to try to bend them in the direction of either their ideology or on behalf of a movement? Or should they be focusing more on getting small wins for the community that they technically represent? Because we have to keep in mind that people like AOC technically, represent a small constituency. I mean, not small, but comparatively to this entire country, people that feel like they're her constituent. Really, there is a small faction of people that are her constituent. So should she be focused more on those people and racking up wins for them, or pressuring the party leadership, which might put those wins in jeopardy?
Yeah, she should be joining the people that she represents. If they're being activists, she should be joining them, right? That's who she's representing. She's not representing her party leadership. I don't see how it's silly or stupid to be pressuring politicians to do their job.
That's absolutely.
So what was it that you meant? Sorry if I misunderstood.
No, we should be having a larger discussion at large. We can talk about the insufficiencies of the squad, and we should. And I think that's totally fine. But rather, I think we should be discussing at large how even people within a party like the Democratic Party who are progressive and like AOC, Ilhan Omar, these people probably internally, people like Bernie Sanders, probably they have probably views that are much more radical than what they can let on. But I think in a lot of ways there's a lot of truth to the idea that the Democratic Party reforms you. You don't reform the Democratic Party, and so we can elect the best people we can in the Democratic Party, and we should probably do that. But it's just totally insufficient at just pressuring individuals. Rather, I think larger organization organizing and I think that's just the best approach. It seems that a lot of the debate and a lot of the discourse doesn't really go into that too much, especially when it comes to force the vote. But maybe perhaps you.
Yeah,
well,
I want to get your
that's the
response to
case,
that, Franco. But just as a way of kind of segueing on top of that as well, you mentioned, Ian, you said that you don't reform the Democratic Party; the Democratic Party reforms you. And I think that's a good segue after we get Franco's response to talk about the viability of a third party and if this country is destined to remain in perpetuity a two-party system.
Yeah, let me just quickly respond to what Ian said. If that's the case, like we're focusing too much on those individuals, it's because those individuals promised us that they would be more than just politicians, that they would be activists, that they would be revolutionaries. That's what Bernie Sanders would say. He's like, "Are you ready for a revolution?" And then AOC, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib, they spawned off of that. It was a response to what Bernie Sanders was promising. And so, if anything, at least it serves as exposing that these people are just like regular politicians. And I think it still is okay to call them sellouts if they're not doing the things that they promised.
Totally.
Now, when it comes to third parties, let me go and see what I have here. In theory, it could work, but where we are now, with the dysfunctions with the Green Party, Libertarian Party, and MPP, we can't. I like the approach that MPP was going for and trying to unite like all people from all backgrounds to unite again to who all agree that our government doesn't represent us. But right now, there's too much dysfunctionality happening within that party. A lot of the problems within these parties need to be addressed first, and more people need to be aware of it. The majority of the people that believe in third parties right now, the people who think that they can succeed are just hoping right now. More work needs to be done. More people need to be informed. We need to stop thinking that other people can do the work for us. The least we can do is be informed. Look at how educated working class people are in Latin America. We see the way they protest their politicians is more effective than how we pressure our politicians here, because our country is way more propagandized. The advantage that the Latin American third parties have, though, is that their elections are more secure. But they do still have to deal with coups. But what we have to deal with here is how our third parties are being suppressed so much. And if we want a third party to succeed, we have to address that. And I'm not seeing that being addressed in the Libertarian, Green, or Movement for a People's Party. Seeing how corrupt our election system is, though, I think in a way we are experiencing coups here. There's articles written about this on truthout.org. Whitney Webb has done great work also talking about our voting machines. There's evidence that even children can hack these voting machines. And the people who own these machines, they can have political interests. So over time, laws have changed to allow more privatization of voting machines. There is overwhelming documented evidence showing how poor communities are gerrymandered and rigged against. These are people who, if given an option, are likely to vote for the most populist candidate. In other countries, voting is also a national holiday. We don't have that here. That's something that needs to be addressed more with people who are organizing with third parties. Third parties have to go through more obstacles in the states to get state ballot access and to be on the debate stage. Even at the local level, Democrats and Republicans make deals with each other. And even with independent politicians like Bernie Sanders, they make deals so that they suppress third parties. All these things need to be addressed if we want a third party to succeed. And I don't think we're there yet right now.
No. 150%. That's like everything you said is 150% correct. I'm just trying to maybe I'm trying to understand, is your approach purely through an electoral lens? Because I'm not necessarily just in favor of producing a third party within the electoral grand scheme of things. I think we can build a party again. Like I actually, to this might confuse some people because people probably haven't read Lenin, but I do quite like Lenin's approach, at least to this, is where that you need to build a fundamental party, and then from that party, it can't purely operate electorally. It has to actually operate in an actual concrete movement orientated lens. So no, I'm 100% with you there. I think I'm just trying to. I think I've been. What I've been trying to say is that the entire discussion around force the vote and stuff, it seems to be a little bit more narrow than what I would like. I think the question is more, it's a political economy question, right? Quid pro quo, whether, who, that being capital, controlling, the entire inner workings of our electoral system. And I think there's a really strong argument to be said that our electoral system needs radical change. And then through, that radical change, I don't think it can just happen through electoral politics. I'm in favor of it, like voting for the best people possible. But I think the most important thing you could do is organize and strike. But we, of course, don't have that infrastructure in the United States. So, so at that point, if we don't have the infrastructure to strike, which we don't, but we should, what's your solution though, Franco? That's
keep informing the masses as much as you can. Like we're seeing online communities forming, and then these online communities translate to communities on the ground. Like for Force to Vote, we were seeing people that were showing up also for the Assange event, and then the Force to Vote people would go to the Assange event. Imagine if we can expand that even more and communicate with more people and organize with more people. Like, oh, we're having this strike over here against Amazon. We're having this other strike over here to fight against the Great Reset. Like we're having this strike over here for to fight against censorship. Like this is how we can get a general strike going. The more we inform people, the closer we get to a general strike, because there's issues that affect everybody personally. So we need to make sure we reach every individual.
No, that's 100% correct. I just Yeah, no, I don't
I
don't disagree. Yeah.
I had a bit of
Yeah.
a question for Franco after a little bit of an exchange you guys had earlier. And Franco, you said that you compared AOC and the squad to Obama in the sense that they promised things to get elected but didn't deliver. But you also mentioned that they were kind of spawned, their elections were kind of spawned as a response to the Bernie Sanders campaign. And obviously that was not successful. They do not find themselves with executive power, and they do find themselves, in a Congress under Joe Biden administration, which is certainly not sympathetic to their policy goals. Same with Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. So I'm just wondering if you are at all sympathetic to the squad members for maybe not having been able to achieve these policy goals, maybe not because they don't want to, but because they don't have that administration of Bernie Sanders who's also committed to these policies.
Like you're saying that they need an administration that's filled with people like Bernie Sanders. That's in like we need to have a Bernie Sanders administration. Is that your question?
I'm just asking you to respond to what you think their best path of resistance is to the Joe Biden neoliberal administration that we find ourselves in.
Okay.
And do you find yourself sympathetic to them at all? The fact that they did run on these policies, but now the fact that Bernie wasn't elected and they weren't able to ride the coattails of that movement to, the positions being passed. I'm just wondering if you had a response to that at all.
Yeah, they need to expose the Biden administration just as much as they were doing with the Republican administration. We saw with Trump, they were aggressively attacking him. Why is it different with Biden? I mean, he's an imperialist too. He just bombed Syria. Ilhan Omar gave a response, but the thing about it is that she was acting so surprised with it. Like, what did you expect? You didn't have any resistance against people like Avril Haines, Antony Blinken, Lloyd Austin, who receives money from, who has stocks in Raytheon. Like, why are you surprised? And why aren't you exposing that this is the reason why we have imperialism? So I mentioned earlier how a progressive congressperson has to be exposing what's happening behind the scenes to the people so that people can understand why these problems are happening in our country and around the world. Because I'm sure we will all agree with here that foreign policy directly affects domestic policy. Yep. So there needs to be more resistance to people within their own party. Because again, what Kyle Kalinske said when he formed the Justice Democrats, they're not here to make friends.
Yeah. Do you think that the squad has been adequately anti-imperialist or has adequately called out their own party leadership for imperialism in specific, Ian?
Oh, fuck. Probably not. No, not at all. I just don't really give a fuck what they say. Like, I just don't like, I think that in some ways there's a reverse, there's an opposite of what's going on. Like, where I think if we focus too much on the squad, you're almost in a way enabling them. If there's too much discourse on actual like the failings, and I get like we should that like I'm totally there's a little bit of a there's a little bit of a dialectic here, right? Like, we can talk about all the insane insufficiencies of the squad, stuff like that. We should, but then also too, we have to be a little bit careful that we're not taking an over moralistically tone to the squad, because ultimately they're working within a larger system at large that won't facilitate any change whatsoever. Thus, I think that it would just be wise to sort of analyze what's going on at large rather than just purely moralizing a group of people they're not in a position whatsoever to really make any change. So that's
I have a question for Ian. So you're saying that they're just like any other politician?
Kind of.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the reason why there's this focus on the squad is because there's a lot of people who think that they are saviors, and we have a lot of people in independent media or who call themselves independent media, but they receive money from corporations like TYT who still praise the squad as being like our saviors. And these are people who are untouchable. We're not allowed to criticize them.
Do they?
So that's why there's a focus on them.
Okay.
Because we want to help wake people up to that they're just like any other politicians. They want like people like me want people to realize what you and I already see, that they're just like any other politician. Because like I categorize them in the same way that you do. It's just like any other politician.
Right. So I mean, I think taking the approach and rather informing people on individuals within the squad. I think we should be informing people on the political economy at large, how capital operates, how essentially like a system like that can't really facilitate. I think taking the approach that I see, I'm not saying this is your approach whatsoever, Franco, I have no clue. But to what I have typically seen on something like Twitter, it seems to be just a pure approach to individuals rather than the political form and the political economy at large.
Well, I want to pop in here and just ask a question that I think could kind of narrow, or just kind of expand upon this. Do you guys think that the squad is largely, specifically somebody like AOC, who parades the banner of socialism a lot more than somebody like, Ro Khanna, who we nominally would include as being a part of the broader squad? Do you think they're misappropriating that language? And do you think that kind of is why people expect more out of them than the regular politician? Do you guys think that there's anything to the fact that they call themselves socialists, so people expect them to act towards a higher moral calling, a sort of empathy amongst a fellow man that is not represented by a name like Democrat or Republican?
Yeah, I think Ian mentioned earlier that they're social democrats, right? So if they're calling themselves that, they're not exactly socialists. Bernie Sanders, they actually call themselves democratic socialists, right?
That's probably incorrect, but yeah, no, that's right. They do call themselves that.
Yeah, but they're not accurately that, but
Correct.
That's what they call themselves.
Yeah.
So socialism, it's supposed to be a stage towards communism, and to be a socialist, you also have to be anti-imperialist. I was discussing earlier, making the case how if they're supporting people like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi who are imperialists, then they're supporting imperialism. As far as AOC, again, she calls herself a democratic socialist. The rest of the squad are similar in that ideology, and I'd classify them as social democrats, but again, that's what they call themselves, democratic socialists. They are for things like Medicare for all, increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. They're for increasing taxes on the millionaire and billionaire class. They're for breaking up the big banks. Bernie Sanders and the squad, I'm just repeating myself here, but when AOC and the rest of the squad, when they deferred the party leadership on issues involving Venezuela, a socialist country, when AOC takes pictures with the Bolivian coup leaders, when Jamal Bowman says that he supports Israel, when Ilhan Omar said that she doesn't support an embargo on a weapon sale to Israel, but she does support an embargo on weapon sales to Iran because she said that they're committing human rights violations, even though Israel is also a human rights violator. And Amnesty International called for an embargo to Israel. All of them, except for Rashida Tlaib, voted for that horrible stimulus package that gave money to countries the US and its Western allies are invading, and only gave the American people pennies, those $600 that barely can pay off anything. When they're all silent on the most important press freedom trial of our lifetime, and Julian Assange, who exposed war crimes, and his extradition threatens all journalists and puts them all in danger if they follow the examples of Julian Assange and expose war crimes. AOC, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib, they voted against Tulsi's request of Congress to report the humanitarian impacts of sanctions we put on other countries. Then that makes them what I learned from my friend Ramiro in his video, that makes them social imperialists. And Vladimir Lenin described social imperialist as someone who is socialist in words and imperialist in deeds. A social imperialist who is most often than not a white European, but in this case for the squad, they're all minorities, is someone who supports progressive social policies and economic policies at home while continuing imperialist policies abroad.
That's right.
Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
They also support the Nordic model, even though these countries, Norway, Denmark, they support U.S. imperialism, right? I think we can all agree with here that they're more so capitalist countries than socialist countries.
Oh, 150%. Yeah, no, they're really just robust social democracies. They're definitely not. I don't think I think this is another misunderstanding too that I see. I don't think democratic socialism really has ever been practiced either. Like we've seen some sort of syndicalist models and pop up in Spain. Quickly, they capitulated to capitalism, sadly. And then we've seen more existing Marxist-Leninist sort of, probably the best terminology to use for it, systems in China and Russia. But yeah, no, No, that's exactly right. No, no disagreement whatsoever. I think purely I'm speaking not necessarily towards Franco, but on the internet. Like, I think we should be discussing though this problem in a more systemic lens, and we should move away from a lot of the typical normative sort of moral lens that we typically see. We usually sort of will take the approach that we vilify certain individuals. We can express all kinds of disdain and disappointment. I'm pretty disappointed too. I mean, I'm disappointed, but like I expected it, I suppose, and I think that I might not have the same emotional like impetus or anger towards them. So if that is the case, I think that at least the online discussion for the left should probably be a little bit more geared towards the systematic issues, the political economy at large in the United States. So.
Well, Ian, I did have a question that we can start with you, because I think this might be something you have a good response to. And that is that despite what we've talked about, and maybe the fact that the Squad aren't really social democrats or even democratic socialists necessarily, in your opinion, has the socialist or progressive movement itself been influenced in a positive direction by the Squad? And do you think overall, as a movement, their presence in federal government is a net benefit?
Yeah, I think this is again. Maybe was that to Franco or was that to?
Well, we'll have you both respond, but you can take it first.
Oh, okay. So this is where we're getting to the part where I think abandoning electoral politics outright is probably a little bit insufficient, because again, when we can map what has actually happened from the Squad, we see not just with the Squad but the Democratic Party at large. Like the Democratic Party, where it's at right now, is quite the base of the party. Is quite a bit more progressive than it has been in a long time. The problem is you have an entire old guard of neoliberals, and then you have a small set of people that are social democrats. They can't do anything, and or they won't do anything due to capitulation to leadership or whatever. But I think that saying that, like, look, like, because of the radical insufficiencies that we should sort of like throw out to the prospect of potentially electing like social democrats, I think is just a little bit short-sighted. I think that we can point out their insufficiencies, then also acknowledge that, like, look, we should at least try to primary more Democrats, while also trying to fundamentally build a third party, try to build organization on the local level and national level, and then try to use direct action to fix things. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say that we gained from the Squad's presence. Like, what was positive about it is that we gained the understanding that even if you don't take corporate money directly, one can still abandon the principles and then that they ran on for political expediency. So let's think also about what they're doing optically. They stand for things like, again, like Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage. Some of them, they claim to want to end the wars. But look at what they're pushing for, though, like online. Like AOC is pushing for more censorship, and people are buying onto it. They're pushing for corporate censorship, which is going to hurt the left. Ilhan Omar, she retweeted an article that by the Washington Post, which revealed how some of those protesters in January 6th were having economic troubles. And then she said, no, that's not the problem. The problem is white supremacy. Well, how do we get white supremacy? It's because they've been told lies for their entire life, because of they don't have the opportunities that other people do because of where they grew up. People are propagandized and brainwashed so that we are divided. So by her saying that, no, that's not the problem, it's white supremacy, and her not focusing on how white supremacy happens and not understanding the pain that these people have, and not understanding that these people, these Trump supporters, they want to see the truth. There's a reason for why they were attracted to Trump. It's because Trump was exposing the swamp of Washington, D.C. And so rather than Ilhan Omar telling these people, look, I understand your pain, like this, but Trump is not going to get you there. Look, I'm going to help you out. This is why we have these problems. It's because of these corporations that buy off our politicians. Instead, she's demonizing them. And so what that's doing is that's creating more division. So especially on Twitter, I'm seeing way more division happening because, and a lot of it is supported by AOC, Ilhan Omar, and other squad members, and them implying that the only problem of our country is Republican and racist people. That's not the only problem. We need to look at the root, and they're not focusing on that. They're not focused on unity.
Yeah. I wish I could. I mean, I wish I could say something more. I think, you're right, Franco. Like it's, and I think the ultimate reason why I kind of, you guys asked if I would hop on. I think someone backed out. Is that I think that taking the approach that like it is a larger systemic issue at large, hopefully maybe can change the direction of an overly moralistic dialogue on Twitter, the internet at large. So I think your conclusions are correct. I just don't see the I just don't see the reason why I would I don't feel the same innate anger towards the squad that I would else, from other politicians. I don't know. Maybe that's short-sighted though. I don't know. I just see that it's electoral politics as it stands within the Democratic Party just seems totally radically insufficient. Yeah.
We need more of a focus on activism than on electoral politics. Yeah, and I think that we're agreeing on that here.
Yeah. What I think is kind of refreshing and kind of nice about this kind of debate. This was obviously one of the first official debates that we've hosted on the Vanguard, but one kind of the fleshing out of ideas, the consensus that has been reached. Obviously, I don't think that you and Ian 100% agree by any means, but the amount of overlap that we've been able to kind of establish in this debate, I think, shows something that I think often gets overlooked on the left. The left is constantly, referred to as a bunch of rabid infighters who can't have, constructive debates on strategy. And I don't know. I was personally, I was just really happy with how this evolved. I feel like I'm better off having listened to your guys' perspective.
Yeah, I don't think the conclusions are wrong whatsoever. And again, I'm not actually speaking to Frank. I'm speaking at large with the left sphere or whatever. I think the way that discourse happens is a lot of the issue, right? So like even Franco acknowledges, and I imagine most of his audience does, like, yeah, there's a massive there's a massive issue with the way politics is working today. Thus, it's pretty insufficient just to rely on voting mechanisms. Rather, organization at large needs to happen. I think though that we need to take pretty specific approaches to that online. And yeah, that's just something. Again, I'm not speaking to Franco. I have very little. No offense. I haven't seen your work, Franco, or anything like that, or your audience or whatever. But yeah, that's typically what I see online though. Is it's a pretty big shout fest. Usually people are a bit overly moralistic in their outlook towards it. I think it's a question of the political economy and the way capital pretty much flows into the government.
I will say that some people who see what I see with the squad need to learn to be patient. Like, yeah, you guys are on the right track, but keep in mind that some people are on different are in different stages in their political awakening, and try to be understanding of that, and to tell people like that who are overly demonizing people on the right to also tell those people, look, try to understand them too. Like, they were brainwashed their entire life. In the end, we're all being oppressed by the same people. We're not each other's enemy, and we all got to agree with that. And Ian, I do got to say, I love the way you edit your videos. I saw a couple of them. They're really good and educational. Yeah, and I really enjoyed this debate, man. I came out of this seeing that we agree on a lot more than I thought.
No, yeah, I actually figured. So I've only seen just a little bit. No, I figured me and you had the exact same conclusions. I think rather than kind of debating, I wanted to take the approach of not debating you, but rather debating the sort of, at least trying to like expose the form in which this debate usually happens. which it's not in a very constructive context, especially online. Again, it's kind of hard to because you guys just asked me not too long ago. I wasn't very familiar with your work. I checked out some of your stuff, but I wanted to kind of go in and into here, and I kind of wanted to make the case that I think the question of whether force the vote or whether the squad as a whole is a sellout is just a little bit too narrow. I think it's a bit deeper than that. We can absolutely have those discussions, Franco. You can absolutely I think it's pointing out the insufficiencies. Rather, I just think that as a cohesive whole, potentially for a political movement, the left, I think we should just probably do more than that. And again, I'm trying to speak at large, not what Franco does. Rather, just at large, what I do see online, it typically is a bit of a narrow discussion. But
Right.
I will say I don't think it can be mutually exclusive on focusing on larger issues and also exposing the squad and 100%. The synthetic left.
Yeah, no, 100%. That is completely true. Same thing with electoral politics versus direct action, right? I don't think it should be an exclusive endeavor. Some people will argue that. Rather, though, like you said earlier, I think that we should understand that politics is a process, right? Everything's kind of a process, and I think we should just try to approach things more constructively, rather than it being sort of a what's a good way to describe how a lot of discourse happens on the left? A lot of the I don't know, just like kind of shouting matches, I suppose. It's a bit annoying, and I think it sort of downplays a little bit.
Caustic.
I think it kind of downplays in a way actually what's going on. It's sort of this weird like nihilistic approach to things, right? I agree with that, and I think that some of that has to do with the fact that people have been cooped up inside and they really are suffering right now. So some people are probably genuinely very frustrated, and they probably do feel nihilistic. But there also is a lot of unproductive, caustic shouting. So I think that absolutely there's a lot of that going on. And I just wanted to say as well that we really do thank you, Ian. As you alluded, we did have a slightly higher profile actually figure that was going to take part in this debate that did bail, that I think was probably a little bit too afraid to take on Franco. So yeah, you didn't have very much time to prepare. We just let you know at the last minute, and we really do thank you coming through, man. We thought you did such a good job, and we had a great time listening to you two go back and forth. Yeah. And I want to add, I'm just now looking at chat. Holy shit.
Let me check it out.
This is bad. I was trying to, hopefully what I was trying to do is I was trying to expand the discussion, not attack what Franco was saying. I didn't actually expect this to be much of a debate.
Oh, it's okay, man. I mean, obviously people are going to be opinionated, and people are coming to this with their own preconceived notions. And like I said, I really enjoyed listening to you guys go back and forth. I think you both brought really interesting and valid points to the table. Can't wait to have you both on again.
Yeah,
hopefully.
Both of you have a permanent home on the Vanguard, as you I'm sure you know at this point. We're happy to have you guys on whenever. And this was a really great first debate to kick it off. Just thank you so much for doing this, both of you. It was a really great time, and just as a listener and low-key moderator, I had a great time. Kind of bearing witness to the exchange of ideas.
Yeah, Zach and Gavin, you guys were awesome, and thank you guys so much for organizing this and moderating this debate. And I'm a fan of your channel.
Oh, thanks, man.
Us as well. Yeah. We're huge fans of you, both of your guys' channel. And if anyone is watching that has not already, make sure to subscribe to both Franc Analysis and Epoch Philosophy, two of my personal favorite YouTube channels. Great content. These guys are both working extremely hard. They both have different lanes on YouTube, kind of in the breadtube sphere, but they're two of the best when it does come to their respective lanes. And again, as I said, if you don't maybe know a lot about philosophy and theory, Epoch Philosophy videos are a great way to start. And if you just want some really good, reasonable leftist commentary, check out Franc Analysis. Really just enjoyable, smart, intelligent commentary. Again, I can't recommend these two channels enough. And I can't thank you guys both enough for, taking an hour of your time to have this discussion. And again, in my eyes, you guys are both, great debaters. This was a wonderful exchange and very productive. So thank you so much. It really does mean a lot to Zach and I. And if anyone's watching, as we alluded to earlier, we will be doing a lot more of these debates, hopefully on a monthly basis. So make sure to smash that subscribe button, and also subscribe to Franc Analysis and Epoch Philosophy. We're trying to build a larger coalition of independent leftist voices here at the Vanguard and promote our fellow comrades in this space. So yeah, I guess thank you so much.
Just echoing everything that Gavin said.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, Franco. Thank you for doing this. I want to reiterate. Holy shit! I guess the chat did not like me too much. But I wanted to
fuck the chat, dude.
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate. I didn't actually expect much of this to be a very big debate at all. I figured this would be more of a discussion. Maybe we can all four do this again too. We can maybe concretely talk more about strategy as a whole rather than just the squad, because I think that's sort of my
that's fair.
I want to reiterate. I think that I don't want to focus too much. I don't think we should focus too much on the squad. I think we can and we should call out their insufficiencies, but the importance of calling out their insufficiencies is exposing a system at large that's gonna
we'd love to have that conversation too. That's a whole, other can of worms I think we could really all get into. So obviously a standing invitation for you guys to come back. We can have that discussion whenever, or something else, just whenever. We really appreciate your guys' time, and we can let you go now whenever.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very well spirited. Thanks again, Ian and Zach and Gavin. You guys are all awesome. And yeah, thanks for keeping this in good spirits, Ian.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
No
guys,
problem.
thanks so much, and I guess we'll fucking wrap this shit now.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll see you guys later.
Cool.
Peace out, guys.
Thanks for watching, everybody.